excited for session 2 of the National High School Basketball Association Coaches Series, joining forces with our BCAM podcast. It's a discussion on how we can educate to navigate, how we can help athletes and parents and coaches flourish in this new landscape of our game. Our next guest, Mary Klinger, will be a continuation of our first guest, Phil Martelli. Mary's a renowned high school coach, so it'll give us a nice fresh perspective on her angle and her perspectives on what it takes to flourish in today's game. Dan, your thoughts on bringing someone with Mary's resume onto our podcast?
So Mary's a very successful high school coach in Philadelphia, Rutgers Prep Academy, and she's going to be great. She's going to have the perspective on the girls' side and high-level girls basketball and her experiences. And she's been coaching for 40-plus years. She's become highly recommended to us, so we can't wait to visit with her and talk basketball and where we're at today.
Thank you for that, Coach. It's with that, let's give a listen to Coach Mary Klinger. We are very excited for our second session of the National High School Basketball Coaches Association podcast, Educate to Navigate. This is to really continue our conversation that we had with Coach Martelli and get a different perspective, more of a high school perspective from the one and only, the legendary Mary Klinger from Rutgers Prep. We'll talk about Mary's illustrious career throughout the podcast, but just some highlights. Over 700 wins, 10 state championships. She's also an employee of Nike, which we'll get into later, and a national champion player herself in 1982 for Rutgers University. Mary, welcome to our podcast.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and as you'll find out, I love talking basketball and I love talking history, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, Coach Martelli, when we asked, could you give us some names of people that could really help us with this mission of helping kids and parents and families flourish in today's landscape? You were the first one he mentioned, so we're looking forward to this conversation and looking for different ways where we can help kids become the best version of themselves.
Sounds great.
Coach, one aspect of basketball that will never change, but I think might have a different perspective, is that of player development and setting goals with players on just what level they are. Are they a Division III player, Division II player, Division I player? Now, you've coached them all. You've coached the best players in the country, and you've coached many Division III players. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you go about maybe two things, skill development and then educating them on what the appropriate level is for them?
Sure. Well, I think it starts for me in usually the seventh grade. I've coached travel teams, 7th and 8th grade, and I've been fortunate enough that a lot of those kids will come to Rutgers Prep. So I get an early look at them. And what I do is, the travel, and then when they come here, Rutgers Prep, we do a lot of the skill development in the summer, and we'll play in some fall leagues and different things like that. And also, too, I get an opportunity to watch a lot of my players play on different travel teams. And as you mentioned, a lot of them have gone Division III, II, and I. And I think probably to answer your question about the level, I'm brutally honest. And I think sometimes that gets me in trouble because I am so honest. And but I found that the kids want to hear that. They want you to be honest. And what I've done is I'll ask a prospective kid, where do they think they're going to play? And of course, everybody wants to dream of playing Division I. And I think some of them have no idea what that entails. And I try to educate them on that by bringing in some of the former players I've had, and I've brought in all the different levels, and they give them a sense of what to expect. And sometimes it's a real eye-opening experience for them. And then the other thing, what I'll do is, as we progress, through the years, I'll ask them, where or who has reached out to you, what schools and what different levels, and I think it's pretty clear cut that a lot of them will say, hey, it was Division 1. So it's okay. So then a lot of other people believe that you're a Division 1 player. And in some cases where I've had Division 3 kids, they want to play Division 1, but the people reaching out to them are Division 3. And it is a hard conversation because you don't want to kill their dreams, but you also want to be, set in reality, and they need to hear that also. And then from there, what I do is every year I sit down with them, we evaluate and talk about, what it is that they want to accomplish. Some kids I have just want to play high school basketball, they want to be a part of a team, and that's okay. And then I have, another set of kids that want to play Division 1 and they want to play at the highest level. So that's a different conversation. And then I get everything in between with the Division 2 and 3. So that's pretty much what I do.
Sounds like there's a lot of intentionality when you're
Oh,
sitting down with
absolutely.
your players and they're actually setting goals and not
Absolutely.
only just goals for the next season, but maybe a 2 to 3 year plan on how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
That's great.
Without a question. And, the other thing too is the school that I'm at, Rutgers Prep, we really prepare the kids for the next level. And not only athletically, but academically. They come in as a freshman, they have academic advisors, and they also have college guidance people that early. And what they do is they map out, they have, I guess, their academic footprint, and it lays out the classes that they need to take. And I think as a sophomore is when we really start identifying student athletes that have a chance to play at the next level. So that conversation with them is a little bit different, and right from the get go. And the other thing that I really appreciate about this place is that they really get to know the kid, not only in the academic world but also the athletic world, and they try to match different colleges with what the student athlete wants to either study, or do they want urban, they want city, they, whatever. And I think that's really important also because you're really getting to understand the whole picture, the whole kid.
So I wonder, if we could take a look at like widening the context a little bit about the state of high school basketball, particularly girls, but boys too. Like, what do you think high school coaches in general, not specific Rutgers Prep, but in general, can do to help better prepare their athletes to play at the next level? What I mean, you talk to a lot of coaches at the college level, and maybe Coach Archer and Coach Young, you can weigh in after Coach Klinger here. What do you think are some things that high school coaches can do that might be listening to this podcast to get their athletes better prepared to either play Division 3, Division 2, or Division 1 from a skill point or even a mental point? Coach Klinger?
I think the biggest thing is they have to understand the child. They have to understand their interests. And I think that's a lot of conversation. I think the high school coach really has the ability because you see your kids every day, and getting to know them on the different levels, I think is one thing that's really important. And understanding, is this a dream of the child to play Division 1 or 2 or 3, or is it their parent, pushing it? So I think that's a conversation, and I think that's an ongoing conversation. But the other thing, what I would recommend, and I know what I've done as a high school coach, is I've reached out to different coaches. What are you looking for? And I've had a lot of coaches reach out to me to say, hey, do you have a point guard that can do A, B, and C? And I think that's been, over 41 years, that's been a conversation that I think the college coaches do trust that I, kind of know what I'm doing, and I'm very honest, and I assess the kids to really what their ability level is. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. But I've been pretty on the mark with the level that these kids can play. And then the other thing is to do your homework in terms of, finding out what travel teams, if they want to play, what travel teams will match their abilities. Also, too, and I tell the kids to investigate the schools that they're looking at or they're interested in. Do they have a camp? Do they have days where they're bringing kids in to tour the campus, to see the facilities, to understand what they're about? And I think the high school coach, and I've learned that, through all my years, that these steps are pretty necessary if you really want to be involved in their recruitment, or you really want to be involved in helping them reach the level that they want to get to.
Coach Young, do you want to weigh in on that? As far as I know, you have, a great relationship here in the state in Michigan with Coach Izzo, but you also know, a lot of national coaches as well. What are some things that you feel like our coaches can do to help better prepare to play at the next level?
I think it is very important that they are involved with, obviously, their grades and all that going in, but the AAU process of knowing that AAU coach and that fit and that communication with that, I think that's a huge part of it right now. So you're all working in the same direction. And then if the student athlete is starting to, we think this player can play at the next level, is to educate their parents on exactly what Mary was just talking about, the levels that we think that they would be successful at. And having former players who have been at these levels and college coaches talking to who's recruiting them, the parents sometimes, or maybe a lot of times, is not in tune with the level that the players should play at. And so working together with them, and, I think a big part of what we're doing right now is that we are trying to educate players and parents and coaches on the realities. And that only comes from working together and communicating, especially with the AAU coach as well. What are they saying to them that maybe is not on the same wavelength as what we're saying to them? And so you can get that little divide if you're not, on the same page and communicating with those people.
Coach Archer, you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and I'm not I'm not sure how it all fits because, Mary, one of the things that we also are paying a lot of attention to are the other 97%, that want to be part of a high school team for camaraderie, etc., but really want to play college soccer or something else, and to blend that, because I know here in the middle of New York State, we have a lot of schools that can't field girls freshman teams, girls JV teams, because they're burned out trying to cover AAU, etc., in multiple sports,
Right.
So it's hard to say, where's your dream? Some of them have them and some of them don't know yet, So I'm not, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's interesting because I know what I do is I really recommend that my players play multiple sports.
Yes.
I think that
Love
is so important. And, I have to say a lot of them, when I really stress, I want you to play multiple sports, a lot of them do. And usually, I have really good really good athletes, and they're going to help multiple teams. And I also think for their growth, if they're not as good in, say, one sport, I think they really develop some empathy towards the kids that might be at the end of the bench. And I think they're a lot more helpful, and they lead better when they've had that experience where, what, hey, it's not all about me. It's about, others. And I think that's a great thing.
It is. That's
we love to hear that. How do you combat that parent or that player that just wants to specialize? I mean, do you get a lot of pushback?
I do at times, but I think my track record really helps me. And I talk about the different kids that have played in this program that have gone on and done great things at the collegiate level. And to point them to the different sports that they've played and how they were still able to get to where they want to be. And I also share my story. My twin and I were high school All-Americans, in Philadelphia, and we played 3 sports. We ran cross country, played basketball, and played softball. And we got to the highest level also. And I try to use those stories. And the other thing, too, is, you had mentioned earlier about building a relationship with the AAU coaches. I think along with that, because so many of these kids have trainers for this and that,
Yeah.
trying to build a relationship there. Because a lot of times, and unfortunately, I have found that, they just want to take their money. And they're going to tell them what they want to hear, not necessarily what they need to hear. And I think that that's been a challenge at times, but it's a work in progress. And I've been very fortunate that I've been able to, deal with some trainers that have done well and have done right by my kids.
That's a good point, Mary.
That is.
And Coach Arch, you bring up a great point about the 97%. And I think Coach Klinger, nailed it when she talks about communicate, communicate, communicate with respect to setting goals. And all coaches want to be bridge builders. And if that end of the road is, college soccer, or it's college basketball, or it's just to have a great high school experience, I mean, that coach can be involved heavily in that process. So we appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, without a question.
Coach, one of the obstacles in high school sports right now throughout the country is the transferring, and you see that in the transfer portal at the at the college level, excuse me, but we're not immune to it at the high school level. Can you talk to us a little bit about your perspective on that? How kids might be shortchanging some delayed gratification, and how that might be harmful down the road for some of these athletes.
Absolutely. It's interesting. And I said our school does a great job of matching schools with the kids. And I've already laid the groundwork for that. What I also think we really do is get to know these kids. And I have to say, in my 41 years, I've had 3 kids that have transferred at the collegiate level. At the high school level, it's funny, I had 3 in 1 year, and that was last year.
Wow.
And that
Last
was
year?
last year. Yes, I had 3 leave and 3 come in. So we're absolutely, it is filtering down to the high school level.
Mm,
I just think that it's the wild, wild west right now.
it is.
And unfortunately, the kids I think are paying the price because a lot of them think the grass is greener on the other side, and they come to find out that it's not. And I had mentioned about our school really doing a great job of, matching schools with kids. And that's something that I would hope that others would try to emulate or whatever. I want to talk about the one young lady I have that, I mean, she lit the world on fire this year, Michaela Blakes at Vanderbilt. She set scoring records and things like that. I have to tell you, the process that she went through to get to where she is, I told her, she and her parents, that they should copyright it and sell it because what they did as far as investigating and thoroughly just investigating the different programs that they were involved with, that kid will stay. I can't say for sure, but I would venture to guess she will stay at Vanderbilt for 4 years because of the legwork that she did, and it was her family that made that decision. It wasn't any outside influence. And I think sometimes these kids get, sold a bill of goods, and it's unfortunate because they pay the price. But this young lady, what she did, and her choices were pretty incredible. Stanford, UCLA, Indiana, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Tennessee, and she chose Vanderbilt. And what she did, the way she investigated, she didn't sign early. She didn't make everything with the social media that these kids deal with today.
Yeah, right.
It was not like that with her. And I'll tell you, I think the way that she went about it was really special. And, Vanderbilt got a good one.
That's so
Sounds
cool.
like she did her homework and it paid off.
Absolutely, without a question. So,
And that could be some lessons for our high school students as well, is to make sure that you're really you understand what the basketball program's all about, their mission, their philosophy, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So we talked about the multi-sport athlete the soccer player, the volleyball player. Let's say that those players are on a basketball team and maybe they're the 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe even the 9th, 10th player. How do you still motivate them to be part of the team, to stay with it, to let them know that this journey will be worth it 20 years later? Just stick with it. It used to be that, a coach could say things like that, like, hey, 20 years later, you'll come back and thank me. Well, we don't think like that as a society now. We're more like instant gratification. So how do
Yeah.
you go about, selling your program to those multi-sport players, especially if they're not in the high or first part of the rotation?
Well, I think a big part of it is building the culture. What is it that you want, and you want all your kids? And I tell you, I think one of the biggest things for these kids, they want to feel valued, that what they're bringing to the table means something. And I think it's a constant communication, constant conversation with them, that what they're bringing is valuable. And I don't want to say, selling them. And I think you have to, you have to show them that they are valuable, and in different ways. And we talk about, in 20 years, they're not going to know or care if you score 20 points, but they're going to understand, or they're going to brag about or talk about championships they've been on, teams that were so special, and opportunity to play with some of the best kids that are playing now in college, and maybe be fortunate enough to play in the pros. But I think it's the culture that you build, and I think it's to make them feel valuable and really demonstrate that almost every day.
Coach Young or Coach Archie want to weigh in on establishing a culture that creates a buy-in for players from 6, 7, 8, 9, and down?
I don't have no. She said it. She's right on.
Yeah, and I do think there's a lot of ways you can do it. It depends upon the reception that you get from the parents and from the kids. But once you can get it growing, then it's usually going to kid to kid. We'll
Yeah.
take care of it. But it's a key ingredient that a lot of parents and trainers don't have the chance to do, which we as the scholastic coach do get.
Yeah. And I think that's it every day, that communication every day. I know with me, my kids, because this place is so special, and they treat the whole kid. They want to know about what their interests are in the arts. I have kids that are drama production. I'm like, holy cow, I had no idea this kid was
Right.
so talented.
Yes.
I have kids that can draw, and the architecture, and take pictures. And I think understanding that and valuing that. I have in my office things that they've made in ceramics class, that they were just going to toss us. No, give it to me. I want to display it. And I think that's understanding the total kid, and really trying to understand them. Or with the families, we have some kids that have some siblings that are challenged, but getting to know them, and appreciating them and bringing them into the fold, I think is just so important. Would I have done that when I was younger? Probably not.
Right.
But as I've grown as a coach, and I've really seen the value in getting to understand the total kid, it's really paid off.
That's great. Every player wants to be valued and known and appreciated. So, Coach, you could probably share with your players, I'm sure you do, some of your fondest memories about being on a team. That 1982 championship team must have been pretty special.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners just what made that team so special? Maybe not just their talent, but maybe their intangibles too.
Our senior year, we won the national title. And in my 4 years, that was the least talented team.
Wow.
Which was pretty incredible when you think about it. And I tell the kids all the time, it's the talent that meshes. It's the talent that gets along. It's valuing what each person can bring to the table. And our senior year, the chemistry on that team was just absolutely phenomenal. And I think that is so important. It's funny, this past year, BTN had released, they did this video. I don't even know what it was.
Is
It
that
was
the Big Ten Network, Coach?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and a group of former Rutgers students that were involved in the radio and um, television. Well, anyway, they put together this, it's called Forgotten Champions. And it was one of the most incredible things we ever did. And it kind of, I think it came out this year or late, I can't remember, but all the kids watched it. And so they got to see Coach as a player. And now they, the coach is as a coach, and it was we had some interesting things, with the hair and the oh my God, the uniforms that we wore. But it was great. And the cool thing was some of the lessons that I learned, as a point guard, trying to get my kids to do the same. They finally were able to see some of the things that I was talking about. And I think I hate saying this, but like when you've played the game and you've played it at the highest level, I think there's a, intangible that the kids they respect. They respect
Absolutely.
players and
Absolutely.
have played at the level that I played at. It was good. Oh, I tell the war stories, and let me tell you, the kids just look at me as if I was insane. And I tell the stories, because of my twin and I. Oh my God, some of the things we did. I'm surprised we didn't get locked up. But at the time, it was a different time then, and we let me tell you, we had fun. And Teresa
Well,
Grens.
you could always blame it on your twin,
Oh,
right?
without a doubt.
Whatever you did. Yeah.
Oh, without a question. Hey, let me tell you, I had to talk my way out of a couple fights because, she got into it with somebody, and I'm like, oh no, you got the wrong twin. Oh, trust me, there were some stories, and we had such great experiences. The level that we played at, the teams we played against, it was great. And that's what I talk to my kids about. It's if you're going to play and you're going to put all this time in, you want to be the best. You want to be the best, and to be the best, it's hard. And we talk about that. I There was I don't know if it was a podcast that Carol Lawson, the Duke coach, talked about. She said you learn to do hard things better. I'm telling you that to this day still sticks with me, and I try to use that with the kids. If it was easy, everybody would be great. If it was easy, everybody'd be champions. It's not easy. And what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to do to be a champion? So we talk about that a lot, probably ad nauseum, as
No.
far as they're concerned.
Well, I think that, one way to get to excellence is enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And you certainly, have that energy level that you can already tell. Even after 41 years,
Yeah.
coach, you're still bringing the juice, which is
Yeah.
really good
I love
stuff.
it. I do. This is
Yeah.
passion. I could talk about this all day long and talk to anybody and everybody about it. But I do. I love what I do.
Well, enthusiasm is caught, not taught. So your players see that, and one of the things that's very evident is your playing career is well documented. But what you gather from this podcast is the level of care that you have for your
Yeah.
athletes, and
Yeah.
that I
Without a
think
doubt.
is the driving force to your success, Coach. One of the things that we ask all of our guests is this question: if a young aspiring coach wanted to have a long, distinguished career, what advice would you give that coach?
The first thing is you have to be honest. You have to be honest, and you have to do things the right way. Shortcuts don't work. And the other thing I would advise is to find a mentor in the area or even in your own school. Someone who's I don't want to say been around the block, but somebody who's experienced some of the things that you're going to. And I think as a young coach, you don't know what you don't know. And I was fortunate enough here at Rutgers Prep. I started, this was my coaching career. I started very young, right out of college, and I was able to make mistakes here when I was younger that didn't kill me. Sometimes today with the social media and everybody with their camera and everything like that, it's hard, and I fear and I worry about some of these coaches. But I think as long as you do the right thing, you're honest, then I don't think you can go wrong. And try to find a mentor that can really help you, especially with the tough questions, because everybody's going to be in tough situations. That's a given.
Yes.
And if you can have someone who you trust and respect to help you then I think it makes the journey a lot easier. And I think it makes the journey longer. We are losing so many young coaches that are so talented.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate because kids aren't going to get the benefit of that. And I hate saying that.
Are they
So true.
leaving because of parents, or they're not getting the playing? The coaches, the young coaches.
I think a lot of it's the parents.
Yeah.
I think they're driving the kids out. And I say this, and and I've said it publicly. I'm telling you, one of my best and most fun years of coaching was COVID. No parents, no fans, and it was just the kids, the refs, and it was great. I loved it. As soon as the parents came back in, the trainers came back, everybody came in, it got back to being, crazy.
Crazy.
I think a lot of it is. And I think there's unreal expectations placed on kids by parents.
100%.
Yeah, and I think that's really harming. We talk about mental health. Well, I think it starts in the home and how things are done there. And I have a son who played, and it was interesting. He went to school here from pre-K all the way through 12th, and what an athlete. Could he shoot the ball? He didn't take after me. He took after my twin. Um, we had a rule, my husband and I and our son, we had a rule in the house that when we went home from a game, that was a safe place. And we said to our son, if you want to talk about the game, we'll talk about it. But you have to bring it up. And then, do you want me to talk as mommy, as coach, or as an athletic director? How do you want it? Because I wear all those hats. And what I found that to be was probably one of the best things, because you hear that probably the hardest, most dangerous place for kids is on the ride home. And
Yes.
the parents just kill them. And I think having that experience with my own son, we have such a wonderful relationship. And I think because the pressure wasn't on him. He played Division III and then he played overseas. He had a great career. He got to travel the world. And I think a lot of that was because of the way my husband and I treated him. And I said to him, I said, Mike, you're not going to achieve the same success as a player that I did. I played on national championship. I was an All-American. I got to play on the USA team. So don't try to, be like mom, or, be like mom because you love the game, you want to work. But as far as that, I think, for the kids, that's the hardest part, being in that
Great
car
point.
ride home. Yeah, it's,
Great point.
yeah.
So I'd like to stay here for a moment because one of our guests, not our guests, but one of our listeners are parents. And so and you hit on it a little bit, Coach, but maybe we can broaden the conversation. How can we give parents like some hard advice from a coach's perspective? If we have some of the best coaches leaving, if we have some of the best players getting burned out, if we have some of the best referees just throwing in the towel, and one of the common denominators is the parents,
Sure.
how do we just say to them, like, join our team, like, let's do what's best for the kids? Like, how do we give them that hard advice? Because I would think most coaches worth their salt have a parent meeting before the season. They're doing the right things. It just doesn't seem like the parents are listening too much.
When your job is dependent on teenage kids making decisions,
Mm-hmm.
your job is dependent on that. I think there's something wrong with that. And I say this all the time for the college coaches. When your job security is dependent upon a 17-year-old choosing your school, there is something wrong, because you're 17 and you think you got the world, and you don't know what you don't know. What I tell my parents, and this is probably a little harsh, but I've had some success with it. I'll straight up say, look, you love your kid, I don't. I hope after 4 years I like your kid. And I chuckle a little bit about that. And I said, look, my job is to try to get your child to where they want to be. But that's teamwork. It's just not me doing it, I said, I need your help. I need the teacher's help. I need admission, all of that. It has to be teamwork. And the other thing that I'll do is if I have a parent that's, upset with a playing time, I do a lot of analytics. So I have things right in front of me laid out, especially when a, kid wants more playing time or more shots or whatever, I have it laid out. Sometimes the conversation is, maybe I should look a little bit more. And other times it's like, no, I'm right on the money. But what I'll say to the parents, do you coach? And, someone will look at me like, well, I do rec ball or what? Okay, well, it's a little different. And I say, I don't have a child on the team. So what I'm trying to do is put out the best team possible. And trust me, if your daughter can help us win, your daughter's going to be playing. And then, it's always a conversation. What can I do to, get more playing time and things like that? Or what can my child do? I said, leave them alone. The pressure you're putting on them, it's just sometimes it just handcuffs them. And I would say that just let your child live their life. There's nothing wrong with the background, if they want to play AAU or they want to train or supporting them there. But it comes to a point where they have to put up or shut up, really, when it comes down to it. And I know it probably sounds a little harsh, but they have to experience. And I'll tell you, the other thing I think is wrong right now is that parents are not allowing their kids to fail. And I think that's another big part of it. You have to learn how to fail in order to be successful. And I think if you look at all the great players, they're going to tell you that, how many times they failed.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's a big part of it. Parents want to ease their way. I mean, I'm a mommy. I get it. I understand. But I also understood that my son had to learn how to fail.
Yeah, well said.
So,
Coach Young, you have anything to add on that with perspective to informing parents and helping them be just another way that kids can have a healthy sounding board to help them achieve the goals that they want?
I think this is the toughest situation that we're all dealing with.
without a doubt.
It's we're experienced, us four, right? That young coach is not, and they know that, and we all love our kids. And when our kids were playing sports or doing whatever they're doing, we were, you have to have some discipline and understanding that they're going to go through tough times, and that's just the way it goes. But it's the toughest thing right now, and that's really why we're talking about this. A big reason is our youth sports model in our country feeds to this, just feeds to travel, to spending money, to getting a scholarship, to getting the best you can play. Well, if I'm not playing, I'm not going to get a scholarship, so it must be the coach's fault. And it literally just spirals all the time across the entire nation. And, Dave can speak to this. We hear the same horror stories from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast and to the South.
Yep.
And we feel as our organization, it's our responsibility in some way with other, sports associations is to try to educate those navigating this system as we speak. And it's not easy.
No.
But that's why we're talking about it. We're going to spread the word, and we're going to try to help people get through it. Help that young coach say, it's not you. It's the situation, and you're going to get through this. Don't quit. You're too good. Hang in there. And that's our responsibility, is to help those coaches get through that and really help the parents get through it, because it is tough for them.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Coach Archer, you have any thoughts on that, on how we can help educate parents and give them some things in their toolbox that they can help
Nothing really
their own child?
specific. I think Dan's mentioned a bunch of them, and Mary has. There's so many things you can do, but you have to do them. And it's
Yeah.
There's a good book out there called The Super Communicator, and I think that might bring some clarity for parents on just what their child might need. And so, like, the thesis really is a lot of the communication is they're just people are having different types of conversations with each other. For example, like a player after a game might be emotional and they just want to have an emotional conversation, meaning just to be listened to. But then the parent might go, you should have done this, this, and this, and they're having a practical conversation with them instead of an emotional one. Or if they're just having fun, like, hey, where do you want to go eat? And they call that a relational conversation, and then they start with more practical stuff. So I think that's a really good book, and maybe our associations can maybe just share that book as far as how do we communicate not only with their child, but with their coach and with everybody else. It's just like, what kind of communication are we having? And sometimes, and I'm sure your son was that too, and it sounds like you created that boundary, is maybe he did want to have a practical conversation, like, Mom, what do you think I should do? And he is leading that conversation.
Yeah. And I think that's important. But the other thing too, I think it's important that parents listen. I
Yes.
think so many times that they don't. They just have their own thoughts, and they're not truly listening. And understanding that, it could be especially girls. Oh my God, teenage girls, 41 years, like
Right.
I mean, I kid and laugh about it, but there's nothing worse than dealing with, teenage girls. But they are emotional, and it could be, they're crazy for 2 minutes, and then it's like, okay, I got that off my chest. What's next? And understanding that, I think, is so important. And that's, we talk about building relationships. I wrote that book down because I can't wait to read it. You had asked about with the young coaches. I have to tell you, I think I might have every book ever written about leadership. And I am constantly looking for something that will really, pique my interest, or something I can use that is so valuable that I can, share with others. I think I'm the senior coach in our league and probably in the area. And I have so many that ask me questions, and I'm always looking for something to help them with, be a mentor, for them, and help guide them. And I'm going to look at this because this sounds like a great book to read.
Mike is also an author of 2 books on leadership, so
what?
you might want, and they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. So Mike can off the podcast can fill you in.
Okay.
He's a wonderful author, and as you well know, a great podcast guy.
Oh, that's great.
So, Coach, we can't thank you enough for joining us. This is our second podcast. The great Phil Martelli let us off, and he recommended you, as we said earlier, and you knocked it out of the park. Nice. I think we all have many things in common. One is we could talk hoops all day long, but we don't want to take too much of your time. Coach Archer, on behalf of the National Basketball Coach Association, you have any last thoughts for Coach Klinger?
No, it's just so great to hear what you're saying. Now we've just got to keep spreading the word so that the parents can navigate this.
Yeah,
it
is. It's tough.
Yeah.
And the problems you're seeing in college, which I think is the wild, wild west, is trickling down to high school, and something has to be done. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's going to happen soon. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did, but I don't know. Something's got to give.
Something does.
Coach, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Something tells me we're going to have you back on at some point, because this conversation was too good just to stop here. But
I would love it.
Thank you so much on behalf of all of us, and we really appreciate your time, and mostly we appreciate what you do for our student athletes and all the things that you do for this great game of ours.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I just have one question. Is my Philly accent as bad as Phil's?
No.
I know. I've been out of Philly for a long time, but
but
my
it's still there. I can still hear it a little bit.
Okay, it's not as bad though, right?
Oh, God, no.
No, that's great. Well, thank you. I really appreciate being able to talk on topics that I think are so important.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks again, Coach, and we appreciate your insights. That's our second episode of our Coaches series, and we can't thank you enough for listening and all your positive feedback thus far. Take care.